"I'm dropping my 3 kids off with you," my daughter-in-law said over the phone. "You don't do anything anymore and you can watch them while I'm away." For a moment, I thought I'd misheard her. The way she said it, sharp, casual, like she was ordering coffee, made my jaw tighten. She didn't even pause to ask if I was free. It wasn't a question. It was an announcement. I looked out the window at the little garden I'd finally gotten around to fixing since retiring 6 months ago. The sunlight fell across the roses my husband had planted before he passed. I'd been pruning them that morning, thinking how peaceful it finally felt to wake up with no clock to chase. No deadlines to meet, no boss breathing down my neck. 62 years old, a retired nurse, a widow, and finally, learning to enjoy quiet. I'd earned this calm, so when she spoke to me that way, as if I were a live-in babysitter collecting dust in her storage closet, something inside me went very still. "How long are you going away for?" I asked evenly. "Oh, just a few days," she said. I could hear her smirking. That careless kind of confidence that only comes when someone's gotten away with too much for too long. "A little trip with my girlfriends. I need a break." "You're retired now. It's not like you have anything to do." I smiled, not because it was funny, but because if I didn't smile, I might say something that would split the air between us. "Forever. You don't do anything anymore." Those words echoed in my head long after the line went quiet. People think retirement means doing nothing, but they don't see the decades of doing everything that led up to it. The double shifts, the sleepless nights, the children raised and buried, the debts paid, the hearts broken and mended. They don't see the hands that tremble from arthritis or the back that still aches from lifting more weight than it ever should have. I'd done enough, but apparently, in my daughter-in-law's mind, that meant I was available, like a shelf she could use whenever she pleased. "Fine," I said at last. "Bring them over." She didn't catch the tone underneath those words. Calm, even sweet. That's the thing about people like her. They never listen for what's beneath your voice. The call ended, and for a long while I just sat there staring at the roses. Their red petals looked almost smug in the afternoon light, delicate but full of thorns. My son, David, hadn't called in weeks. Ever since he married her, our relationship had become a polite exchange of holidays and short visits. He'd changed, not cruel, just absent. She'd filled up all the space where our closeness used to live. And now she wanted to drop 3 little lives at my doorstep like luggage. Part of me wanted to call her back and say, "No, absolutely not." But another part, the older, quieter, smarter part, told me to wait. Sometimes you learn more by saying yes. I got up and made myself a cup of tea. The house was still, the air filled with the faint hum of the refrigerator and the ticking clock above the stove. I looked around at the clean counters, the neat living room, the polished table, all the small signs of a life finally under my own control. I wasn't about to let anyone turn it upside down. If she thought I was going to sit here and be taken advantage of, she had another thing coming. I sipped my tea slowly, letting that thought take root. By the time the cup was empty, I'd made up my mind I would teach her something she'd never forget. Not through shouting or fighting, no. I was done with that kind of noise. I would teach her with silence, with patience, and with consequence. When you're my age, you learn that real lessons don't need to be screamed. They're felt, deep, unsettling, unforgettable. So I smiled again, walked to the small wooden desk in the corner of my living room, and pulled out a notepad. At the top of the page, I wrote, "For when she comes back." Then, underneath it, I began a list. I didn't know exactly what would be on it yet, but I knew one thing for sure. When she returned from that little trip, she wouldn't find the same woman she left. Behind comment where you're watching from, and tell me, what would you have done if someone spoke to you that way? The house I live in isn't just a home. It's a timeline. Every wall holds a year. Every scratch on the floor, a story. When my husband Thomas and I bought it 38 years ago, it was nothing but a tired old structure at the edge of Maplewood. The windows leaked, the roof sagged, and the paint peeled like sunburned skin. But he'd stood in the middle of that crumbling living room, turned to me, and said, "I can fix it. We'll build something that lasts." And we did. He was a carpenter, the kind who believed that if you built something with love, it'd outlive you. He proved it too. Every nail in this house still feels like his handwriting. I still remember the day he laid the porch steps. He said, "So one day, when we're old and tired, we'll sit here and watch the sunset, and we won't have to rush anywhere." We never made it that far together. A heart attack took him before 60. Just like that. One second he was humming in the garage. The next, silence. People think grief comes in storms. But it doesn't. It comes in tiny drips. The missing coffee mug on the counter. The unwatered plant. The silence on your left side of the bed. After he was gone, I kept the house the way he left it for years. Every screw, every paint stain, every note scribbled on the walls. Then, as time wore on, I started to see the truth. The house didn't just belong to us anymore. It was mine, and it was time to live again. So I retired early, sold the small rental property we had, downsized my work, and told my son David, "I'm finally going to rest." He'd smiled. "You deserve it, Mom." He was proud of me back then. He used to come over every weekend with coffee and donuts, talk about his job at the bank, and help fix things around the yard. Then came her, Vanessa. The first time he brought her home, I thought she was polite, a little sharp, but harmless. She wore perfume that smelled like gardenias in confidence. She complimented everything, my table, my garden, even my cookies. But I could feel it underneath, that quiet judgment city people have when they're trying too hard to sound humble. She'd laugh, toss her hair and say, "David tells me you're quite independent." "Mrs. Brooks, that's so inspiring, Mrs. Brooks. Not Mom, not even Ma'am. Just distant enough to sound polite but cold enough to draw a line. Over time, that line became a wall. Phone calls turned shorter. Visits turned into quick drop-offs. And every time she came over, she'd mention how hard it must be living alone, or how big the house is for one person. I knew where those words were heading, so when she called that morning, talking about dropping off the kids, I didn't just hear entitlement. I heard a plan in motion. It wasn't just about babysitting. It was about testing boundaries. You see, people like Vanessa don't barge into your life all at once. They slip in quietly, with small favors, temporary stays, and short visits. Before you know it, your home isn't yours anymore. It's a place you manage while someone else runs it, but not mine, not this house. After the call, I walked around the living room, touching the edges of furniture Thomas built with his own hands. I could almost hear him saying, "Don't let anyone take what you built." So I opened my notepad again and wrote down 3 things. Boundaries are blessings. Kindness is not weakness. People forget that the quiet ones always notice everything. Then I added one more line. Underlined twice. Don't just react. Prepare. The next day, I started preparing. I cleaned out the guest room, not to welcome them comfortably, but to keep a record of every item that went in and out. I checked the locks, the spare keys, even the pantry. Vanessa once joked she'd probably move in if she could. Let her try, I thought, because this time, I wasn't going to be the soft-hearted mother-in-law who stayed silent. I wasn't the woman who cried when people forgot her birthday. I wasn't the nurse who gave until she had nothing left. I was the woman who built this house, who kept it standing through storms and loss and years of disrespect. So if they were going to test me, fine. But when they came back from that little vacation of hers, they'd find the test had turned into a lesson, and I was the one giving it. My son, David, used to have my eyes. That soft brown that looked like autumn sunlight through tea. When he was little, he'd follow me everywhere, even to the laundry line. He'd stand with his toy hammer, pretending to fix the world right beside his daddy. He was gentle, thoughtful, the kind of boy who'd notice if I was tired and bring me a chair before I asked. Somewhere along the way, that boy got replaced by a man who only called when he had a minute. When I heard his voice that afternoon, hours after Vanessa's call, I could already tell she'd sent him to smooth things over. "Hey, Mom," he started, that soft, nervous tone he always used when he needed something. "I already talked to Vanessa," I said. "Right, yeah, about the kids. She told me you said okay, and I just wanted to—" "David," I interrupted gently. "Did you think to ask me yourself before she planned all this?" Silence, then a small sigh. Mom, she's been stressed. You know how it is with the kids and her job and everything. It's just a short trip. There it was, and her job and everything. The phrase that excused everything she did. I understand stress, I said quietly. I worked double shifts for 30 years. But I didn't drop my responsibilities on someone else and call it love. He groaned, the way grown children do when they don't want to hear a truth. Mom, please don't make this difficult. It's just a few days. I smiled again, though he couldn't see it. Of course, honey. I'll take care of them. He relaxed immediately. Thank you, Mom. You're the best. I'll tell her you said yes. He hung up before I could say anything else. That was David, always eager to keep peace, even when it meant losing a little bit of himself each time. I remembered when he brought Vanessa over for Sunday dinner, back when they were engaged. She'd watched me cut the roast and asked, "So you like to cook for big groups, huh?" I'd nodded. It's how we Brookses show love. She'd laughed lightly, tilting her head. That's sweet. My mom used to order takeout. She said cooking for others is a waste if they don't appreciate it. And that right there was the difference between us. She didn't do things out of love. She did them for credit. When Friday came, the doorbell rang at exactly 9:30 in the morning. I opened the door to find Vanessa standing there in oversized sunglasses, the kind you wear when you want to look expensive. 3 children stood behind her, 12-year-old Lily, 9-year-old Max, and little Sophie, barely 5, clutching a stuffed rabbit by its ear. Here they are, Vanessa sang out, brushing invisible dust off her designer jacket. Their things are in the car. I packed extra snacks and their tablets, but you know how picky they are. She leaned in as if she were doing me a favor. Oh, and please keep them off sugar. Max goes wild, I nodded slowly. Noted. Behind her, David was unloading suitcases from the car, eyes darting everywhere but mine. Hey, Mom, he said, giving me a quick hug that felt more like a handshake. Thanks again. You're a lifesaver, not mother, not person, just a function. I looked at those 3 kids, my grandbabies, and smiled warmly. Hi, loves. Grandma's got pancakes ready. They lit up. Sweet, polite children, each one carrying the innocence their parents had long since misplaced. Pancakes. Sophie squealed. Vanessa grimaced slightly, like the idea of syrup in a carpeted house was beneath her. Okay, so we should go, she said briskly. My Uber's waiting. Uber? I asked. I thought David was dropping you at the airport. Her mouth twitched. He has errands. She hugged each child quickly, more like posing for a photo than saying goodbye. Be good for Grandma, okay? Mommy loves you. Then she turned to me and said something that froze in the air between us. Don't tire yourself out, okay? You're not as young as you used to be. I smiled again, slow and steady. Neither are you, dear. She blinked, just once, then laughed awkwardly. Right. Well, see you in a few days. As the car disappeared down the street, I stood on the porch with 3 small faces looking up at me, full of trust and curiosity. All right, I said softly. Let's get you settled. Inside, the house came alive with noise, footsteps, giggles, the TV blaring cartoons. It was chaotic, messy, and loud. But it was life. As I poured them juice and watched their small hands reach for cups, I felt something inside me settle, a certainty. This wasn't just babysitting. This was observation, a rehearsal for the reckoning I'd been quietly planning. Because what Vanessa didn't realize was this. Every time she disrespected me, she handed me another lesson to teach her, and this time, class was officially in session. Have you ever smiled at someone who thought they were getting away with something? Stay tuned. It's about to get interesting. The moment the front door clicked shut behind them, the air in my house changed. It wasn't silence exactly. It was freedom. The kids were in the living room, sprawled on the floor with their backpacks open, comparing toys and snacks like little diplomats dividing treasures. Sophie's rabbit was missing one ear. Max was already sneaking chips from a bag, and Lily, the oldest, was acting like a small mother, rolling her eyes at both of them. Grandma, she asked politely, do you have Wi-Fi? I smiled. Sweetheart, this is a house with books, crayons, and sunlight. Wi-Fi comes later, after pancakes. Her sigh could have powered a windmill. They were good kids, though. Sweet in ways that reminded me of how David used to be before the world got its hands on him. I made them breakfast, sat them around the old oak table Thomas built, and listened to the way their laughter filled the kitchen. Syrup dripped. Juice spilled. Someone started singing an off-key song about a duck. It was chaos, the good kind. But as I cleaned up after them, a small voice inside me whispered, "Remember? This isn't just about them. I'd promised myself I wouldn't let this become another quiet sacrifice. Not again." So after breakfast, I made a mental note of everything, what they brought, what they didn't. 3 suitcases. 1 stuffed animal. No list of emergency contacts. No itinerary. No note saying where Vanessa was going, who to call, or even how long she'd be gone. Just a few days. That told me all I needed to know. The rest of that day, I let the children do what children should: play, laugh, make noise. But in the background I was observing, at lunch. Lily mentioned her mother had said Grandma didn't have much going on. Max chimed in. "Mom said you get lonely, so she's helping." "Helping?" I smiled, my heart sinking a little. So that was the story Vanessa told them, that she was doing me a favor. "That's very kind of her," I said evenly. "But you know, Grandma's never lonely." I talked to the house. Their eyes widened. "The house?" Sophie whispered. "Oh yes," I said, leaning closer. "Houses listen, you know. They remember everything people say inside them." They gasped. A harmless little story, but a seed, planted gently. Let their mother come back thinking she runs things. The walls themselves would be my witnesses. That evening, after the kids went to bed, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of mint tea and thought about how many times I'd been in this position before. The quiet helper. When David was a boy, I worked overtime just to afford his soccer lessons. When he married, I helped pay for the wedding cake. When they bought their first house, I gave them half of Thomas's life insurance money as a down payment, and every time I'd told myself, they'll remember. But people forget gratitude when it's convenient. They forget the meals, the late nights, the sacrifices. And then one day, they wake up thinking you're lucky to have them, instead of the other way around. That realization didn't hurt anymore. It clarified things. I picked up my notepad from the counter, the one labeled, "For when she comes back." Under my previous notes, I wrote, "Don't confront arrogance. Let it reveal itself." Children see truth faster than adults. The lesson must be remembered, not just learned. Around 9 p.m., the phone rang. It was Vanessa. "Just checking in," she said brightly, over what sounded like clinking glasses and loud music. "How are my babies?" "They're asleep," I said calmly. "They had pancakes, helped me with the garden, and now they're snoring like angels." "Oh, good," she said absently. "Listen, I might be gone a little longer than I thought. The flights are weird, and we're doing a spa thing tomorrow." "How much longer?" I asked. "Probably. The rest of the week? Maybe 10 days. It's all flexible." My stomach turned. 10 days? "Vanessa, that's..." She cut me off. "Oh, don't worry. You'll be fine. They love you. And honestly, it's good for them. They need to bond with their grandma." "Okay, gotta go, bye." Click. The dial tone buzzed in my ear like a mosquito. I stared at the phone for a full minute, then put it down and looked toward the hallway, where the soft sound of children's breathing floated through the house. "Bonding," I whispered. "She wants them to bond with me." Fine. Then they'd bond, with a grandmother who was about to remind their mother what respect looked like. That night, I stood by the window and watched the streetlights flicker across the driveway. The same driveway my husband poured with his own hands, the one my son learned to ride his bike on. If this was the game Vanessa wanted to play, I'd play. But the rules would be mine. I wasn't angry anymore. I was ready. Because sometimes teaching a lesson doesn't mean shouting or punishing. Sometimes it means showing someone just how well you can live without them. And when she came back, from that little spa week, she'd see just how far I'd gone without lifting a finger. The first rule of teaching a lesson: never let them know. They're being taught. That week, my house became a quiet classroom, and Vanessa, though far away, was already the first student. Every morning started the same. Breakfast at 8, school runs, chores, story time, laughter. I ran my home like a symphony, calm, ordered, and full of warmth. The kids responded beautifully. Lily helped me fold laundry without being asked. Max learned how to feed the neighbor's cat, And little Sophie followed me everywhere, holding my apron strings like they were a lifeline. But while I cooked and cleaned and laughed with them, I was observing every call, every message, every little slip that came through my phone. Vanessa had texted me once the entire week. Once. "Everything okay?" I'd replied. Her answer, "Totally fine. You're a lifesaver. We extended the trip. Hope you don't mind." That emoji, that sweet little pink heart, nearly made me laugh out loud. Mind? No, darling. I didn't mind at all. By Wednesday, I noticed something curious. The kids weren't asking when their parents were coming back, not once. Instead, they were relaxing. The kind of ease children only have when they feel safe. No tension, no rushing, no tiptoeing around moods. That told me everything. Vanessa might have been a decent mother by textbook standards, the kind who fed and clothed and posted pictures of smiling children online. But emotionally? She was an absentee landlord. Everything looked perfect from the outside. But inside it was hollow. And now, for the first time, these little souls were breathing freely. That night, as they slept, I sat on the couch with my tea and turned on the lamp beside me. The light fell across the old photo of my husband holding a baby David in his arms. Chubby cheeks, gummy smile, pure joy. I whispered to him like I always did when the house got too quiet. "You'd be proud of them," I said softly, "and you'd be disappointed in what he's become." Sometimes, when the pain sits too long, it becomes strategy. That's where I was now, past heartbreak, into clarity. If Vanessa and David saw me as disposable, then maybe it was time to remind them just how much I'd built, and how easily I could take it all back. So I made a plan. Nothing loud. Nothing cruel, just smart. Step 1 was simple: boundaries. I called my lawyer friend Margaret, retired like me, but sharp as a tack. She'd handled our property papers back when Thomas was alive. "Margaret," I said, "I just need you to check something for me. The deed on my house." She chuckled. "Why, you planning to sell?" "Not yet," I said carefully. "Just making sure no one else is planning to." Her tone shifted instantly. "I'll look into it." 2 days later, she called back. "Everything's still in your name, thank goodness. But you were smart to check. You'd be surprised how many families pull tricks with signatures and power of attorney these days." I smiled faintly. "I wouldn't be surprised at all." Step 2, documentation. I started keeping notes, not out of spite, but out of foresight. I jotted down dates, times, and little details. When Vanessa left, when she called, what she said, what she didn't. Because people forget their own words when they think they're untouchable. And when the time came, I wanted her to remember. By the end of the week, the kids and I had slipped into a beautiful routine. We made pancakes on Saturday, built a pillow fort, and watched old cartoons on my tablet. Max told me I was cooler than Mom. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my coffee. But underneath that laughter, I felt a quiet ache. These weren't just my grandkids. They were the last pieces of my son I could still reach, and I wasn't going to let his wife, or anyone else, twist that bond. So, as they giggled under blankets, I picked up my notebook and added another line beneath my notes. "Don't fight for respect. Prove you deserve it by living well." Some lessons aren't loud. They're lived. That night, my phone buzzed again. A text from David this time. "Hey, Mom. Vanessa says the kids are fine. Thanks again. We might stay an extra week. Hope it's not too much for you." I stared at that heart emoji, matching hers, and felt the strangest calm settle over me. They really had no idea. They thought they'd handed me a burden. But what they'd really done was give me time to see their life from the inside, time to plan, time to decide exactly how to set things right. When I went to bed that night, the rain started, soft, steady, patient. It sounded a lot like justice waiting its turn. By the time the second week began, I knew Vanessa wasn't coming back anytime soon. The signs were all there, the vague messages, the half-hearted apologies, the "just a few more days" texts, followed by pictures of beaches and cocktails. She didn't even bother to hide it anymore. Her latest message came on a Wednesday morning. "Hope the kids aren't giving you too much trouble. You're the best, truly. We'll be back soon." That, at the end, That little laughing face felt like a nail tapping against glass. No guilt, no gratitude. Just arrogance dressed up as charm. I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because by then I had something she didn't. Clarity. I knew exactly what she was doing, and worse, I knew why. It started with a conversation I'd had a month before my retirement. David had stopped by one evening unannounced. He'd been oddly quiet, pacing around the kitchen. "Everything all right?" I'd asked. "Yeah, Mom, just money stuff. You know how expensive everything is. Do you need help?" He'd smiled sheepishly. No, nothing like that. Vanessa's just thinking about the future. She said maybe we should all start looking into property stuff, wills, inheritances, deeds, just to plan ahead, you know? I remembered laughing then, thinking he was just being cautious. But now, those words rolled back in my head with a new weight. Property stuff, deeds, planning ahead. It wasn't about the future. It was about control. That afternoon, while the kids napped, I went into the study and pulled out the old metal lockbox Thomas had kept under the desk. Inside were our original mortgage papers, insurance forms, and the most important document of all, the house deed. Still in my name, still untouched. My fingers traced over the signature line, Margaret Ellis. Notary Public. Thomas and I had signed this together 37 years ago, back when promises were real and family meant something. I sat there a long time, staring at that paper. If Vanessa truly believed I was old, weak, and forgetful, if she thought she could manipulate David into managing things, then she didn't understand who she was dealing with. I wasn't some lonely old woman clinging to memories. I was the one who paid every bill, fixed every leak, and made sure this house stayed standing when the world fell apart. This home wasn't just where I lived. It was my legacy, and I was going to protect it, even if it meant showing my own son a side of me he'd never seen. That night, I called Margaret again. Hypothetically, I said, keeping my tone light. If I wanted to make sure my house stayed in my name, and only mine, what would I need to do? She paused. "Has someone been pressuring you, May?" "Nothing like that," I lied smoothly. "Just planning ahead." "Good," she said. "Then here's what you do. Add a clause to your will stating that no transfer of ownership can occur without your written consent while you're alive. I can draft it for you in an hour." "Do that," I said. "May," she added softly, "you're smart to do this. Most people don't realize how easily family can twist things when money's involved." I exhaled slowly. I'm realizing it now. When the papers arrived the next morning, I signed them right at my kitchen table. Pen steady, mind clear. No anger, no resentment. Just resolve. I placed the updated will and deed into a new envelope, sealed it, and wrote on the front, "For David, when you've remembered who your mother is." Then I locked it back in the box. Later that day, while cleaning out the drawers in the guest room, I found something that made me pause, a folded piece of paper wedged between a stack of coloring books. It was a note from Lily. Her handwriting was neat but hesitant. "Grandma, I like it here. You listen when I talk. Mom and Dad are always busy. Please don't tell them I said that." I sat down on the bed, holding that note like it was made of glass. That little girl didn't know it. But she'd just given me the final push I needed. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about teaching respect, for me, for this home, and for the truth that family is a privilege, not a right. That evening when David called, his tone was unusually distant. "Hey, Mom, everything all right?" "Everything's fine," I said. "Kids are good. House is quiet." Good. He hesitated. "Listen, Vanessa mentioned something about you having the house paid off." Ah, there it was, the first crack in the mask. "Yes," I said simply. "Your father and I finished paying it years ago." He hesitated again. "You ever think about downsizing? I mean, that place is big for one person." I let the silence stretch just long enough for him to squirm. "David," I said finally, "don't worry about me. I've got everything handled." He chuckled nervously. "I know, Mom. Just thinking out loud." "Don't think too loud, dear," I said sweetly. "You might wake something up." He didn't call again for 3 days. As I stood by the window that night, the moonlight glinting off the roses Thomas planted, I realized something simple but powerful. They'd underestimated the wrong woman, and when Vanessa came home, She wouldn't just find a grandmother watching her kids. She'd find a woman who'd turned her peace into a plan. Plans don't start with shouting. They start with observation and timing. By the time Vanessa's few days had stretched into 2 full weeks, I already had her entire pattern mapped out. The timing of her lazy texts, the tone of her check-ins, the subtle way she spoke like the children were items on a to-do list instead of human beings. Each message she sent was a mirror, reflecting her carelessness back at her, and I was quietly taking notes. Saturday morning, I woke before dawn and stood at the kitchen window. The sun was barely breaking through the clouds, painting the garden in soft gold. Thomas used to say, "Morning light tells you the truth, because it doesn't hide anything." He was right. That morning, the truth looked like 3 little lunch boxes stacked neatly on the counter, a full laundry basket, and 3 pairs of small shoes lined up by the door. This house, the one Vanessa probably called too old-fashioned, had become a home again. And the irony was delicious. The same woman who treated me like a useless relic was now depending entirely on me. She thought she was taking advantage of me. But really, I was watching her from the quiet center of her own negligence. The first part of my plan wasn't about paperwork or property. It was about perception. When you want to teach someone who believes they're above you, you don't confront them head on. You let the world hold up the mirror for you. So I started small. I called Lily's school and introduced myself properly to her teacher, something Vanessa apparently had never done. When the teacher realized Lily's mother hadn't even informed the school who would be picking her up, she was startled. "Oh dear, Mrs. Brooks," she said, "you should have been listed as emergency contact." "I agree," I said pleasantly. "Let's fix that." 10 minutes later, my name was added to the school's records. Now, officially, I was the point of contact. Next, I called the family pediatrician. "Just a routine check-in," I said, explaining that the kids were staying longer than expected. The nurse's tone faltered when she realized Vanessa hadn't told them either. By the end of that call, I wasn't just grandma. I was the responsible guardian. Step by step, quietly, I began to build a trail that showed who was actually present and who wasn't. Because when people like Vanessa are exposed, it's not by confrontation, it's by contrast. You simply outshine their absence. Later that week, Margaret came over with a manila folder. "Your updated will," she said, setting it on the table. "And a suggestion." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh? You might want to consider putting a note in your file with my firm," she said. "Something that outlines who's been staying here and for how long. If anything ever happens, legally or otherwise, it'll help clarify who's been doing what." "Meaning," I said slowly, "if anyone ever tried to claim I was unfit or confused, they wouldn't have a leg to stand on," she finished. I smiled. "You always were a clever one, Margaret." "And you always were 5 steps ahead," she said, giving me a look. "I take it this is about your daughter-in-law?" "Let's just say," I replied, "some lessons need official witnesses." That evening, while the kids played outside, I sat on the porch with my notebook and began phase 2 of my plan. Documentation and demonstration. I wasn't going to trap Vanessa. I was going to let her trap herself. All I needed to do was give her enough rope. When she finally returned, whenever that would be, I'd be ready. There would be records showing her negligence. There would be witnesses who knew who cared for the children. And there would be no room for her usual charm or manipulation. Because paper doesn't lie, and neither do children. That night, as the sun dipped below the trees, I called David. He sounded relaxed. Too relaxed. I could hear laughter and background music, the sound of comfort built on someone else's exhaustion. "How's everything?" he asked, casual as ever. "Everything's just fine," I said evenly. "The kids are wonderful. They've been a joy." "That's great. I knew you'd handle it. Vanessa said she'll check flights tomorrow." I murmured. "You must be having quite a vacation." He chuckled. "Well, you know, we both needed a break." "I'm sure you did," I said softly. "You've both been working so hard, on appearances." There was a pause. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing at all, dear," I said sweetly. Just make sure you enjoy your last day of peace." "Last day?" he repeated. "Yes," I said, smiling. "Because when you come back, I'll be waiting, and there's something I think you both need to see." He went quiet. "Mom, what are you planning?" "Nothing, darling," I said. "Just teaching." And before he could ask another question, I hung up. After the call, I stepped outside. The night was still, the air warm with that faint summer scent of honeysuckle and soil. I looked up at the stars and whispered to my husband's memory, "Thomas, I wish you could see me now. You always said patience was a builder's greatest tool." He was right about that too, because I was building something, not a wall, not revenge, but a truth they could no longer ignore. When Vanessa came home, she'd walk into a story she'd written herself. And I'd simply read it back to her, line by line. When you've lived long enough, you learn that life has two kinds of people, those who watch quietly and those who pretend not to see. By the middle of that third week, I began to notice how many eyes were on me. The neighbors, the mailman, even Mrs. Cole across the street. They'd all seen the pattern before I said a word. Vanessa's car gone for weeks, David nowhere in sight. Me walking 3 children to school every morning, groceries balanced on one hip, still managing a smile. People notice things, especially when they've known you for decades. It started with my neighbor, Marjorie. She's the type who knows everyone's business before they do. Normally, that would bother me, but this time her curiosity was useful. One morning, as I watered the roses, she called over the hedge, "May, honey, those kids yours now?" I smiled. "Just holding the fort," she frowned. "That daughter-in-law of yours, the tall one with the attitude, hasn't been around in a while. You need help with them?" "No," I said. "But keep your eyes open, will you?" Her face softened. "Always do. Marjorie's not subtle, bless her heart." A few days later, she accidentally mentioned to another neighbor how I'd been raising 3 kids while the parents were off traveling. By that weekend, half the street knew, good, let the whispers do what they do best. The next unexpected ally came from where I least expected. Lily's teacher, Mrs. Patterson. She called one afternoon. "Mrs. Brooks," I just wanted to say. "It's been lovely having Lily in class lately. She's more focused, more cheerful. Whatever you're doing, it's working." I smiled into the phone. She just needed a little peace and consistency. "I see that," the teacher said gently. "I was actually hoping to confirm something. Her mother hasn't checked in once since the term started, and our last contact number isn't picking up. You're listed as the primary guardian now, correct?" "That's right," I said. "And thank you for noting that. Would you like a copy of her attendance and notes for the month?" she offered. "It's standard for guardians." "That would be wonderful." And just like that, I had an official paper trail, one that clearly showed who had been responsible for those children during that time. A few days later, another unexpected voice chimed in. Jared, the mailman. He's been delivering here since before Thomas died, the kind of man who notices everything but says nothing unless it matters. That morning, he handed me a small envelope addressed to David Brooks and family. The sender was the school district office. "Funny thing," he said, lowering his voice. "I've been holding a few of these. They've been coming for weeks. Thought I'd better ask. You still the one living here?" "I am," I said, "and I'll take them all." He nodded knowingly. "Good, because from what I can tell, no one else has been checking the mailbox at their new address." "New address?" I asked quietly. He nodded. "Yeah, some fancy rental up north. Lease started 2 weeks ago." The words hit like a slap. Not because they surprised me, but because they confirmed everything. Vanessa hadn't just gone on vacation. She'd moved. I waited until the kids went to bed before opening one of the envelopes. Inside was a standard school notice, unpaid lunch balance, overdue forms, and a small note reminding parents to confirm contact details. And yet, there it was again. My address, my name, my phone number. It struck me how life works sometimes, how the truth reveals itself in small, boring details like a balance sheet or an envelope. That's how deceit unravels, quietly. The next day, I called Margaret again and told her everything. She listened carefully, then said, "May, you realize what this means, don't you? They've essentially abandoned the children, at least in the eyes of the law. If anything happened, you'd be considered the primary caregiver." "I figured as much," I said. "You want me to start a file on this?" "Do it," I said simply. "Label it temporary custody for review." "Are you planning to keep them?" she asked softly. I thought about it, about Lily's quiet intelligence, Max's goofy laugh, Sophie's tiny hand in mine. "No," I said after a pause, "but I am planning to make sure their mother understands what it feels like to lose control." That night, the phone rang again. "David." "Mom," he said, his voice tight. "You've been talking to people?" "People talk to me," I corrected. "You should try it sometime." "I'm serious," he snapped. "Vanessa's upset. She heard from her sister that the neighbors are saying she abandoned the kids. This is getting out of hand." I almost laughed. "Out of whose hand, David? Because from where I'm standing, she dropped hers weeks ago." He sighed, frustrated. "We just needed some time. You're blowing things out of proportion." "Am I?" I asked softly. "Because from where I sit, I've got 3 children sleeping soundly, teachers calling me, and your mail piling up here while you're signing leases somewhere else." He was silent. "David," I said finally, my tone level but sharp as glass, "I'm not angry at you. I'm disappointed that you've let her rewrite what family means. But don't worry, I'm correcting the story." He exhaled shakily. "Mom, what are you doing?" "Teaching," I said again. "Just teaching." Then I hung up, my hand steady, my heart calm. That night, I stepped out onto the porch. Marjorie was out watering her flowers, pretending not to look my way. I waved. "Evening," she grinned. "Evening, May. Looks like the neighborhood finally remembers who keeps it decent." I chuckled softly. Let them talk. Because that's the thing about truth. Once it starts spreading, it doesn't stop. And by the time Vanessa came back, every whisper would echo like a mirror. She wouldn't walk into a house anymore. She'd walk into her own reflection. When Vanessa finally decided to call again, it was on a Sunday morning, 18 days after she'd left her children with me, 18 days. That's how long it took her to remember she was a mother. The phone rang while I was buttering toast for the kids. I wiped my hands on a towel and let it ring twice before answering. "May!" "Hi." Her voice was too cheerful, too bright. "How are my babies?" "They're wonderful," I said evenly. "Healthy, happy, well-fed. They've been going to school, helping around the house, saying their prayers at night." "Oh, that's great," she said. "I knew you'd manage. Listen, we had to extend the trip. Business things came up, total mess. But we're flying back tomorrow." "Business," I repeated. "Right. Anyway," she continued quickly, "we'll swing by around noon to pick them up. I'll text before we come," I smiled. "Perfect. I'll be ready." But what she didn't know was that by ready, I meant something entirely different. That night, after the kids went to bed, I went into my study and pulled out my notebook, the same one I'd been writing in since this whole ordeal began. Every page was filled. Dates, times, notes, copies of texts, names of teachers, the pediatrician, the neighbor who'd seen her leave, the mailman who'd confirmed the new address, all of it. Small, quiet details. Harmless on their own, devastating together. Each page was proof of her carelessness. Each line, a mirror held up to her choices, and tomorrow, I was going to let her look straight into it. The morning came bright and clean. One of those rare days when the sun looks like it's on your side. The kids helped me clean the house. I didn't ask them to. They just did. Lily folded napkins, Max swept, Sophie arranged her stuffed animals in a line on the couch, for Mommy to see. I smiled, though my heart pinched a little. They didn't deserve what was coming. But maybe, someday, they'd understand why it had to happen. By noon, everything was spotless. The house smelled like lemon polish and fresh biscuits. I even wore one of my nicer dresses, the soft blue one Thomas used to call my Sunday calm. If Vanessa wanted to walk into my home acting superior, she was going to meet the version of me that her arrogance had forgotten existed. The sound of tires crunching on the driveway made my heart steady, not race. I watched from the window as Vanessa stepped out of the car in oversized sunglasses and heels that didn't belong on my front steps. David followed, looking uncomfortable, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. The kids squealed and ran to the door, flinging it open. "Mommy, Daddy!" Vanessa crouched dramatically, hugging them tight, laughing too loud. "Oh, my babies. Did you miss me?" Lily's smile faltered just slightly. "We missed Grandma, too." Vanessa froze for a second before standing up. "Of course you did," she said tightly. "She's been a big help." I stepped forward, towel still in my hands. "Welcome back." Her eyes darted around the spotless house. "Wow, you really went all out. Everything looks great." "It always does," I said. "Would you like some tea before you go?" She blinked. "We can't stay long, we're exhausted." "Sit," I said pleasantly. "You'll want to hear this." Something in my tone made even David sit down. I brought out the folder, the one Margaret had labeled Temporary Custody and Guardian Records. I set it gently on the table beside my teapot. "What's this?" Vanessa asked, forcing a laugh. "Oh, just some things I thought you might want to see," I said, pouring tea. "Attendance records, medical calls, proof of who's been taking care of your children. You know, the small details that define parenthood." David's eyes flicked toward me nervously. "Mom, what is this about?" I leaned forward, calm as ever. "About what it means to show up, dear. Because I've been here every single day for nearly 3 weeks. The schools know it. The doctors know it. The neighbors know it. I'm not saying that to gloat. I'm saying it so the truth is clear." Vanessa's smile cracked. "Are you accusing me of something?" I met her eyes steadily. "No, sweetheart. I'm reminding you of something. What responsibility looks like." She scoffed. "You're overreacting." I smiled faintly. "Am I?" "The school thought you'd abandoned your kids. The pediatrician removed you as their main contact. The mailman told me about your new address. I didn't have to say a word. The truth did all the work for me." Her face flushed. "That's not what this is." "Oh, I think it is," I said softly. "But don't worry. I'm not angry. In fact, I'm grateful. You gave me time with my grandchildren, time they desperately needed. And now you're going to take something valuable back with you." "What's that?" She snapped. I smiled, leaning back. "A lesson." For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the faint ticking of the kitchen clock. Finally, David said quietly, "Mom." "What do you want?" "Nothing," I said simply. "I don't want your money. I don't want your apologies. I just want boundaries. You will not use me again. If you need help, you ask respectfully. If you plan something involving this house, you go through me. And if you ever forget who built this home, look around. Every nail in this place has my fingerprints." Vanessa looked like she'd swallowed a stone. "You're unbelievable." "I've been called worse," I said lightly. She grabbed her purse, muttering something under her breath, and ushered the kids toward the door. David lingered a second longer. "Mom," he said, eyes wet. "You didn't have to do all this." "Yes," I said gently. "I did. Because sometimes, if you don't teach people how to treat you, they'll never learn." He nodded slowly, said nothing more, and walked out after her. As their car pulled away, I stood in the doorway, not triumphant, just peaceful. The kids waved from the back seat. Sophie blew me a kiss. I caught it midair and whispered, "You'll understand one day." Then I closed the door, and for the first time in years, I slept like I used to before life got noisy, deep, untroubled, and completely in control. The silence after their car left that day wasn't empty. It was earned. The kind of silence that feels like the air itself has shifted in your favor. But silence never lasts long in a small town, especially when people have been watching. By Monday morning, the whispers had grown legs. At the grocery store, someone stopped me near the produce aisle. "May," she said, lowering her voice, "was that your daughter-in-law everyone's talking about? The one who left her kids for 3 weeks?" I just smiled, picked up a peach, and said, "Some lessons take time." It spread from there, quiet conversations at the salon, murmurs at church, polite gossip over fences. And though I hadn't said a single unkind word, somehow everyone seemed to know the story. Or rather, her part in it. That's the thing about truth. Once it's released, you don't have to chase it. It finds its way home. 3 days after they left, I got a call from Lily's school. Mrs. Brooks, the teacher said, sounding uneasy. Vanessa came in today demanding we remove your name from the guardian list. She caused quite a scene. I see, I said, calm as ever. And did she bring identification? She didn't, the teacher said. And when I asked for proof of residence, she hesitated. The school administrator intervened. We've decided to keep your name listed until we can verify everything properly. Thank you, I said warmly. I trust your judgment. After I hung up, I sat down and let the moment sink in. It was happening, not because I'd exposed her, but because her own behavior was finally catching up. That's how truth works. You don't push it forward. You simply step aside and let it trip the person running from it. By the end of that week, my phone started buzzing nonstop. Friends, neighbors, even people I barely knew reaching out to say things like, May, you're stronger than I ever realized, or you did right by those kids. But the message that hit hardest came from an unexpected number. It was David. Mom, we need to talk. Vanessa's furious. She says you've ruined her reputation. I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. I didn't ruin anything. David, I just stopped hiding what she built. He showed up at my house that evening, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. He didn't knock, just opened the door and stood there, shoulders slumped, eyes hollow. Mom, he said quietly, why couldn't you just leave it alone? Because you didn't, I said. You left me alone, with 3 children who didn't ask for any of this. He ran a hand through his hair. Vanessa says people are calling her neglectful. She's scared it'll get to her job. You've made her look. I raised a hand, stopping him. I didn't make her look anyway, David. She showed herself. I simply stopped cleaning up the reflection. He looked away, jaw tightening. She said you planned this, he muttered. That you set her up to embarrass her. Set her up? I laughed softly. I didn't have to. She did that all by herself. All I did was write things down. The truth, plain and simple. He sat down at the table, shoulders sagging. I don't even know what to do anymore. Start by remembering who you are, I said quietly. You're not her shadow, David. You're my son, the boy who used to help his father in the garage, who believed in decency. You can still be that man. He rubbed his face. She's talking about moving out of state. Says she can't live here anymore. I shrugged. Then let her run. The truth follows faster than gossip. Mom? He looked at me, tears gathering. You've really changed, I smiled faintly. No, honey. I just stopped pretending not to notice. That evening, after he left, I received another message. This time from Marjorie, my neighbor. May, that woman came by your house while you were out. She was yelling at the gate, something about you ruining her life. Don't worry, I told her we see right through her. The whole block's on your side. I laughed softly, setting the phone down. I hadn't asked for anyone's side, but life has a way of balancing the scales when you stand your ground. The next morning, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Vanessa herself, disheveled, furious, trembling. Her sunglasses were gone this time, and her perfect hair looked undone. You, she hissed. You turned everyone against me. I stepped aside, letting the morning light hit her face. No, Vanessa. You did that all on your own. She clenched her fists. You think you've won? You've humiliated me. I looked her square in the eye. I didn't do this to humiliate you. I did it to protect myself and your children. You can call that humiliation if it helps you sleep, but I call it accountability. Her lip trembled. You're evil. I smiled softly. No, I'm experienced. For a long moment, we just stood there, 2 women separated by decades. One who'd built her life and one who'd borrowed from others' effort until there was nothing left. Finally, she turned away, muttering under her breath. Before she reached the gate, I said quietly, Vanessa? She stopped, but didn't turn around. When people tell you I embarrassed you, I said, remember, you handed me the story. I just read it out loud. She said nothing, just walked away, shoulders tight, silence trailing behind her like smoke. When I closed the door, I didn't feel victory. I felt release. For the first time in years, my home felt like it belonged entirely to me again. No noise, no tension, No one walking in and out like I was a maid in my own story. Just peace. Simple, solid peace. I poured myself a cup of tea, sat by the window, and watched the afternoon light slide across the roses Thomas planted all those years ago. They were blooming, brighter than ever. The morning after Vanessa stormed off, I woke to a stillness that felt different. Not peace, something heavier, like the air before a thunderstorm. I knew she wasn't finished. People like Vanessa never leave quietly. Sure enough, by late afternoon, I saw a sleek black car pull up in front of my gate. She wasn't alone this time. David was in the passenger seat, looking pale and tired, his jaw tight. I didn't move at first. I watched through the lace, curtains, the same way you'd watch lightning before deciding whether to step outside. Then came the knock. Not polite, not patient, sharp. 3 hard raps on the wood. I opened the door slowly. "May," Vanessa said, voice clipped. "We need to talk. Now." David stood behind her, eyes downcast. "I figured you might come back," I said evenly. "Go on then. Let's talk." They stepped inside. Vanessa didn't sit. She stood near the table, arms folded, her energy like static. "I've had enough of your games," she began. "You've embarrassed me in front of everyone. You've poisoned my husband against me. You've made me look like a terrible mother." I folded my hands on the table. "I didn't have to make you look like anything, Vanessa. The truth did that all by itself." "Don't!" she snapped, pointing a finger at me. "Don't act like you're innocent in all this. You planned this, writing things down, talking to neighbors, making calls to the school. You set me up." I tilted my head. "You left your children for 3 weeks without telling anyone where you were going." "I didn't set you up, dear. I simply didn't cover for you." David's voice finally broke through, low and pleading. "Can we please stop, both of you? This isn't helping." I looked at him, the boy I raised, the man who now looked like a stranger in his own mother's house. "You're right, David," I said softly. "It isn't helping, but maybe it's healing something that needed to break." He frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" I rose slowly, my voice steady. "It means this family's been built on politeness for too long, on me swallowing words, on her walking over boundaries, and on you pretending not to see either." Vanessa scoffed. "You think you're some hero, don't you?" "No," I said simply. "I think I'm finally free." For a moment, no one spoke. Then I walked to the cabinet by the window and pulled out the small lockbox. The one that held everything, the will, the property deed, the legal records. I placed it on the table between us with a gentle click. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "What's that?" "My peace of mind," I said, "and my line in the sand." David stepped closer. "Mom, let me finish," I said. I opened the box, slid out the documents, and laid them flat. "This house stays in my name. No transfer, no signing, no legal loopholes, not while I'm breathing. The children are safe with me if anything happens, and Margaret has copies of every paper you might try to misplace." Vanessa's face went red. "You can't do that." "I already did," I said calmly. "I told you. I don't shout. I plan." She turned to David. "You're just going to stand there while she treats me like a criminal?" David looked torn. "Vanessa, please." But she wasn't listening anymore. She slammed her hand on the table. "You've turned everyone against me. I have nothing now. You've taken my family." Her voice cracked on that last word. And for the first time since this all began, I saw it. The fear beneath the fury. Not anger, not pride. Fear. The kind that comes when someone realizes the game they were playing just ended, and they lost. I spoke softly. "No one took your family, Vanessa. You handed them away piece by piece, every time you chose selfishness over care. You just didn't notice until now." She stared at me, tears threatening. "You think you're better than me?" "No," I said. "I just know who I am." David finally sank into a chair, rubbing his temples. "Mom, she's not a bad person. She just needs to grow up," I said gently. "So do you." He looked at me, weary and ashamed. I know. The clock ticked in the silence that followed. Then Vanessa straightened, wiping her eyes, her voice suddenly flat. You're cruel, she said quietly. You hide it behind that calm voice, but you're cruel. I met her gaze. No, Vanessa, I'm clear. There's a difference. She grabbed her purse and turned to leave. Come on, David, she snapped. He hesitated, looking at me. Mom, I'll call you later. I nodded. You take care of those kids. And yourself. You're still welcome here, when you remember how to come home properly. He nodded once, then followed her out. When the door closed, I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just stood there in the stillness and breathed. This was what reclaiming yourself sounded like. Not victory, not revenge. Just the absence of noise. Outside, thunder rolled far off in the distance. Rain began tapping gently against the window panes. I looked toward the roses in the garden, blooming bright, unbothered, alive. Then I whispered to myself, storms don't destroy strong roots. They test them. And I knew this storm, mine, had finally passed. The storm didn't last long, not outside, and not in my heart. By the next morning, the rain had rinsed the sky clean. The air smelled like something new was beginning, even though nothing looked different on the surface. The same roses, the same old porch, the same cup of coffee cooling beside my notebook. But inside, something fundamental had shifted. I had stopped waiting for peace to return. I had claimed it. That Monday, I walked down to Margaret's office to finalize the last of the documents. The same folder, the one that had sat quietly on my kitchen table, now contained everything that mattered. Margaret greeted me with her usual bright grin. May Brooks, she said, motioning to the chair. You look like a woman who's just settled a war. I smiled faintly. Something like that. She adjusted her glasses, flipping through the papers. Everything's solid now. The will, the property clause, the guardianship update, all notarized and sealed. No one can touch a thing. Good, I said softly. That's exactly how I want it. Margaret studied me for a moment, then said, You know, most people come in here shaking after family disputes. You're the first who looks peaceful. I sipped my coffee, smiling. That's because I didn't fight, Margaret. I just told the truth and stopped apologizing for it. She laughed gently. Well, if the rest of the world could manage that, I'd be out of a job. On my way home, I stopped by the grocery store. A few familiar faces greeted me, soft smiles, warm nods, the kind of silent solidarity that small towns specialize in. Marjorie, my neighbor, spotted me near the dairy section. Well, she said, lowering her voice conspiratorially, word is your daughter-in-law's been quieter than a church mouse. Seems she's embarrassed to show her face. I just chuckled. People always quiet down when truth finally does the talking. You're something else, May, she said with admiration. You didn't even have to raise your voice. That's the trick, dear, I said, patting her arm. If you stay calm, they can hear themselves. When I got home, the house felt lighter, like it was exhaling with me. The kids' drawings were still on the fridge. The faint sound of their laughter still seemed to hum in the walls. I thought about them a lot that week. Lily with her careful kindness, Max with his chaotic energy, and little Sophie with her open heart. I'd kept one of Lily's notes tucked inside my notebook. Grandma, thank you for listening. You make the house feel happy. I read it again that afternoon, and it hit me. This wasn't just about teaching Vanessa. It was about teaching myself. All those years, I'd given and forgiven without asking for respect in return. I'd mistaken tolerance for love. But love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's exhaustion dressed up as virtue. Now, finally, I understood that. A few days later, my phone buzzed with a message. David. Mom, I've been thinking a lot. You were right. Vanessa and we're taking some space. I don't know what's next, but I want you to know I'm sorry. I read it twice. Then I typed back, I don't need sorry, David. I just need you to remember who you are. You're welcome here anytime. No explanations needed. He replied with just 3 words. I love you. And for the first time in a long time, I believed he meant it. That weekend, I drove the kids' school supplies over to David's temporary apartment. Vanessa wasn't there. She'd gone to stay with her sister for a while. The kids ran into my arms when they saw me. Their joy so pure it made my chest ache. Lily whispered, "Mommy says you were mad at her." I knelt down and looked her in the eyes. "No, sweetheart." I was disappointed. "There's a difference. Are you mad now?" she asked. I smiled. "No, Grandma doesn't stay mad. She just learns." Lily nodded solemnly, as if that made perfect sense. When I drove home that evening, the sunset was spilling gold across the road. I rolled the windows down and let the wind tangle my hair. Somewhere between the red light and the turn for Maplewood Lane, I realized I wasn't thinking about them anymore. Not in anger, not in sadness, not in worry. I was thinking about me, about the life I still had to live, the garden that needed tending, the recipes I hadn't tried, the quiet mornings still waiting to be mine. It wasn't revenge that had healed me. It was reclamation. That night, I sat at my desk and opened my notebook for the last time. The pages were full, ink smudged, notes scribbled, truths preserved. At the bottom of the last page, I wrote, "Peace is not given. It's protected." Then I closed it and set it beside the lockbox. Outside, the crickets started their evening chorus, the same way they always had, steady, patient, eternal. I turned off the lamp, looked around my quiet, sun-warmed home and whispered, "I'm done teaching. The lesson's learned, and I meant it. It's strange how a house can breathe again after years of holding its breath." That's what mine did. After all the tension, the raised voices, the quiet tears behind closed doors, the house exhaled. I could feel it in the mornings most of all, when sunlight poured through the lace curtains and the scent of jasmine drifted in from the garden. There was a stillness now, but not the kind born from loneliness. It was rested silence, the kind that hums with life just beneath it. A few months had passed since everything came undone. Or, perhaps, came together. Vanessa had kept her distance. I heard through Marjorie that she was living with her sister 2 towns over, getting her life in order. Good. Maybe she was finally learning what order meant. David came by every Sunday with the kids. No speeches, no apologies, just quiet visits filled with small talk, laughter, and food that tasted like healing. The first Sunday, he stood awkwardly in the doorway, holding a bouquet of wildflowers. "Mom," he said, voice thick, "I don't know how to start." "Then don't," I told him gently. "Just come in. The coffee's hot." And that's what we did. We started over, without the noise of explanations. The children adjusted quickly, as children often do when they feel loved. Lily helped me in the garden every visit, her hands small but careful, replanting the same rosebush Thomas once tended. Max chased butterflies and got dirt on everything, just like his father used to. And little Sophie, she'd sit on my lap with her stuffed rabbit, its ear barely hanging on, and whisper stories into my ear. "Grandma," she said one day, "Mommy said you made her cry." I paused, unsure what to say. "Oh, and what do you think about that, sweetheart?" She looked up at me, eyes wide and honest. "I think crying makes people better. You made me cry too when I broke your cup, remember? But then you hugged me, and I wasn't scared anymore." I laughed softly, brushing her hair back. "You're a wise one, you know that?" She grinned. "I'm learning from you." And just like that, everything I'd done, every quiet, painful, deliberate choice, made sense again. The house slowly filled with new life. The sound of the kids' laughter became a regular rhythm. The clatter of teacups on Sunday mornings, a kind of music. David started fixing things again. Small repairs around the porch, tightening hinges, repainting the fence. Sometimes we worked in silence. Sometimes he talked about things he'd been too ashamed to say before. One afternoon, while sanding the railing, he said quietly, "Mom, you were right about her." But I wasn't blameless either. I looked up from the garden. "Nobody ever is, son. The trick isn't being perfect. It's being accountable," he nodded, sanding slower. "I should have protected you from her, from the way she spoke to you." "You were protecting the peace," I said softly. "You just didn't realize peace built on silence doesn't last." He smiled sadly. "I do now. By late spring, the garden was blooming fuller than ever, pinks, yellows, reds bursting in harmony. The kids called it Grandma's Rainbow Garden. One afternoon, Lily asked if we could put up a sign to make it official. So she painted one herself, uneven letters in blue paint that read, "This house grows love." I didn't have the heart to fix the crooked L. It was perfect that way. Sometimes, when the sun dipped low and the house grew quiet again, I'd sit on the porch and think about Thomas, about the years we built this life brick by brick, promise by promise. He'd always said, "You can't control people, May, but you can teach them what you'll allow." I used to think that was just something strong people said to make themselves feel safe. Now I understood. It was the foundation of everything. Boundaries weren't walls. They were doors you kept locked until people learned how to knock. A few weeks ago, Vanessa sent a letter. No apology, no excuses, just a short note written in her neat, slanted hand. "May, I know I've caused you pain. I'm not asking for forgiveness, but I want you to know I see it now. The harm I did, the help I refused, the family I almost lost. You were right. About everything. I'm getting help. Please tell the kids I'm trying to be better." Vanessa, I read it twice, folded it neatly, and set it in my drawer beside Lily's note. I didn't feel triumph, just gratitude. Because growth, even when it comes late, is still growth. Now when I walk through this house, I don't see memories of chaos. I see evidence of endurance. Every corner is proof that survival doesn't have to be loud or cruel. It can be quiet, graceful, steady. I tend the roses every morning, humming to myself like I used to when Thomas was alive. Sometimes I imagine him beside me, smiling that half smile of his, and in those moments, I realized something beautiful. The lesson wasn't just for Vanessa. It was for me too. I'd spent so many years trying to be loved by being useful. Now I was loved simply for being me.